We have on our, you'll see on the video, Elaine Mulligan, who's our Director for Dissemination and Communications, Lisa Küpper, who is our Director for Product Development, and Miriam Alizo, who is our Project Assistant, and that's our wonderful staff here at the Center for Parent Information and Resources. And also later, you will hear from Jan Serak, who's with the Region 4 Parent Technical Assistance Center, and also Barb Buswell, who is with the Region 5 Parent Technical Assistance Center. And in this first year of the Center for Parent Information and Resources is our liaison to the regional and Native American Parent Technical Assistance Centers, who are members of our advisory team. So to get us started and to give people a few more minutes to arrive, we have a poll that we would like for you to take. So the poll is coming up, and it is a question. How much do you know about RDA at this moment? Is it a drip from a faucet, a teacup, a bucket full, or am I the Rio Grande, or I just know a whole lot and just call me the Pacific Ocean? Please just take a couple of minutes and post your vote by clicking on the circle next to your selection.
Amy is right on, slow down. And I think
we've gotten a lot of votes already. That's great. And you can see the results there. Continue to vote for another minute or so if you'd like.
She figured that out, or did we tell her? That by doing it, by saving all of her leaves, she could figure it.
Okay, I'm going to end the poll. It seems we're all out of voters.
she has $678.
Looks good. We have some teacups, some bucketfuls. No oceans just yet.
No oceans just yet. So thank you for taking the poll, and it looks like there is a lot of space for us to learn more about RDA. And next we will hear from Lisa Küpper, who will take us on our adventure in RDA this afternoon.
Everybody ready to go on an adventure? How do I get rid of the poll there? File thing.
Room to fix for him. Well, we gave him.
Is it gone already?
No.
Yes, it should not be there. I don't see it.
I don't see it.
All right, everybody, fasten your seatbelts. This was my reaction when I first heard that the Küpper was going to write a parent center guide on RDA, and I didn't know what it was. I'd never heard of it. So I freaked out, and maybe when you first heard about it, you were pretty alarmed too. So we're going to give you a crash course. And this is the crash basic number 1. It's the basic acronym, RDA, and what it stands for, which is Results-Driven Accountability.
Right.
And that does really sound like a lot of jargon.
So they just, these that are ongoing.
Perhaps you might want to mute your phone. Ask a question. Crash basic 2, and it's basically why, yeah, see that, Kathy, there it goes.
To the back is
No swim Thursday.
You might want to mute your phone.
He canceled it.
If we can hear you.
He has something to do.
second video.
It's a good day to swim. It's so hot out.
Okay. How did RDA come about? And it was actually begun by OSEP in 2012.
All right, I'm on a conference call now.
Yes, we know.
Yeah, you really might want to mute your phone. star 6 if you want to do that. So OSEP has had a particular way of keeping states accountable or holding states accountable for achieving results for students with disabilities. You're probably very familiar with this after many years. It was mostly compliance with IDEA's requirements. And they collected data from the state based on the state performance plans, the SPPs, PRs, which are the annual performance reports that states turn in, and the indicators. What OSEP said very directly is that, unfortunately, we have not seen significant improvement in results for children with disabilities using this compliance approach. So crash basic number 3, it's still number 2, is that it has revised its approach to holding states accountable. And the new way is results-driven accountability, so that you target the results you want, and then you throw everything you have at it and go after it hard. States will still be required to be compliant, but OSEP will now provide a lot of differentiated technical assistance and support to help states move to a results-driven system of accountability. Crash basic number 3. RDA has a Can you hear me?
Yes.
It's got a
Yes.
weird mess. Okay.
Yes.
RDA has a lot of acronyms. RDA is one of them. Some of the other ones are that you'll hear are the SIP, the SIMR, APP, APR, and
I'm listening.
Okay, this, I have been warned that the Parent Center group is a rowdy bunch, and I can say that you are. But you're gonna have a lot of acronyms thrown at you, and these few beginning ones are really, I'm sure, just the beginning. Let's take a look at them. Take a look at the really big monster acronym. It is SIP, and that stands for the State Systemic Improvement Plan. And this is your new best friend. I think it's going to be all of our new best friends. The monster you see there. Why won't he leave? He needs to leave. The state's written plan for how it will improve. And they do not get to go off and develop this plan in isolation from stakeholders.
Lisa,
Yes?
can you hold on a second? I think I need to mute the participants' lines.
Okay.
You're breaking up every time someone else's audio pops in. One sec.
Okay. Can you hear me, Elaine? Elaine, can you hear me? Plan. States are working right now on developing it. It needs to be done with stakeholder involvement, and that would be parent centers for sure. OSEP has said that the ultimate consumers in this process and beneficiaries will be parents, families, and children with disabilities. So it's very important that lots of families get involved in helping to talk about the SIP. The SIP is a written document that's submitted to OSEP in 3 phases. Next year is when the first phase goes in, and then every year thereafter, the other two phases go in. So let's see what is in phase 1, Crash Basic 5. The process really starts off by deciding what the target will be for the improvement. If the result is where we start, what is the improved result that we want to achieve for children with disabilities? So to decide that target, there are a few things that the states have to do as part of writing their OSEP. And here we have a mini poll time. If you think that, think about the one or two results for children with disabilities that would make a lot of sense and very reasonable, be very influential, make a difference in what they achieve, what would you pick? And we listed a few here as possibilities. One would be their literacy rates. Another might be transition planning. How about graduation rates, improved graduation rates? Could also be behavior, or it could be something else entirely. If you had to pick the target of what your state's going to work on in terms of improving results for children with disabilities, which one seems the best to you? A lot of people like literacy and transition planning. Another few minutes.
You need any help?
Elaine? Elaine? All right, well. Are you ending the poll? Okay, she's ended the poll, and we can see that the majority of you think that a reasonable goal and an influential goal to work on would be to improve transition planning results for students with disabilities. Interesting. Okay, let's go on. Okay, also part of involving the target, deciding the target, meaning what is the result we're going to target and then throw all our resources at. As I said before, deciding the target must be part of a public dialogue. There must be stakeholder input and involvement in determining what that target will be. As the ultimate beneficiaries of this process, families of children with disabilities and youth with disabilities are clearly important stakeholders. Okay, next. Now, how does the state go about deciding on the target? They talk to stakeholders, parent centers, families, their own staff. They also have to take a very hard look at their data. Because they're going to need to write a plan for Part C, which is early intervention, and Part B, which is for school-age children, they need to look at the data in both areas. And there's actually quite a bit of data that they report to the feds about how about their performance of their students and their programs. So they need to take a real hard look at the data, and that goes into helping them decide what target to pick. When they write the OSEP, they have to describe how they analyze their data, what data they analyzed, as well as including and identifying the root causes for why things haven't been going well. So you can see there's a lot of writing that needs to be done and a lot of data analysis. Oh no, what happened? All right, why did that happen? Elaine, up, thank you. This technology is tricky. Okay. And based on that data analysis and stakeholder input, the state decides its target. And this is where you're going to meet the second greatest acronym of all time. And it's truly for a jargon worthy of an acronym. Meet the sinner, the state-identified measurable result for children with disabilities. That's the target. And that's the way, OSEP is referring to it. I think it's just one of those hilarious terms that I think I'm going to enjoy using the term simmer because if I were to say state identified measurable result for children with disabilities 10 times, I think my head would explode. But anyway, you will definitely hear people talking about this, probably using this acronym, the simmer. So let's recap. This first phase on deciding the target, or the simmer, the state has to involve stakeholders, analyze its data, describe in its written plan the root causes for its poor performance, and then identify what target it has selected based on all that. Okay, another basic. After having selected a target, or the simmer, then the state has to look at how it's going to actually achieve that improvement or that improved result. So they have to select strategies or actions that they'll take that they feel will lead them to the result that they want. OSEP is calling this, they have to put into their simmer what's called a theory of action. So why is doing X, these improvement strategies and actions, why will that contribute to improving Y? And they need to be able to explain that. So that's very much based probably on research and evidence-based practice. So a lot of information gathering will probably go on to wed the improvement strategies to the desired result. Okay, next. And finally, the last thing they do in phase one, and it's just a preliminary analysis, they don't really write a plan, but the state needs to look at its infrastructure. What is that infrastructure, the governance, the fiscal, the professional development, its systems of communication, et cetera, is it strong enough to allow the state to teach the early intervention providers and schools how to use evidence-based practice that they think, now I went off again, that is so strange. Bring me back, Elaine. I'm sorry, we're having a little technical difficulty here. Is the infrastructure strong enough and durable enough to build the capacity of local programs to use those evidence practices that will improve results for kids with disabilities? That's another mouthful. If it's not, the data, whatever data the state looks at, will be able to see what areas in their system or their infrastructure they are going to need to work on. Okay. So that's phase one. Now, all of that data analysis, discussion, stakeholder involvement, looking at the infrastructure, selecting the improvement strategies, selecting the target, goes into a written plan and is submitted to OSEP in 2015. The next two phases become much more detailed. Phase two, the state turns the plan into an actionable plan, meaning, okay, maybe in phase one they talked about the strategies they would use. Now they have to get very detailed and flesh out the plan. They also need to be able to write into this SIP how they're going to go about evaluating the effectiveness of their approach. And all this gets submitted in 2016. And then the final phase, which goes in 2017 and then is taking place thereafter, is evaluating. So, did our improvement strategies and our working on our infrastructure actually lead to the targeted result, or the SIMR, that state, I love this term, state-identified measurable result for children with disabilities? And if not, it's time to revise the SIP. So that SDS SIP. So that is RDA in a nutshell, and what, or at least the premise is driving it. Behind that, you probably may not hear as much about the term RDA, as you will, the SIP, which is the state plan, because writing it is really going to be a big, big job. Okay. Whoops. All right, so there we all are 2-3 months ago freaking out over what in the world is RDA. Now, hopefully, we know a little bit more about it. What do we do? Now what do we do? So if you look at that infographic that you could have downloaded, you'll see this person on a bike. And basically, that's what everyone seems to do, is jump on their bike, and find out the answers to several very important questions. You'll see that what's RDA is crossed off because hopefully we know a little bit more about that. But obviously one of the very important questions is, as parent centers start getting involved in the process in their state, is who's in charge of that process? Who's in charge of RDA? Who's in charge of involving stakeholders or in writing the SIP or analyzing the data? These are very important pieces of information to know because they will be the people who will keep you informed and will work with you. Okay, what's your state up to? How far has it gotten? It picked a target? Is it still, analyzing its data? Where is it in the SIP writing process? We can't answer those questions. Only you can find those answers out when you start talking to people in your state. And then one of the other questions is, how do you get involved? How does your parents get involved? And then how do you get other people involved? You round them up and tell them what's going on, and hopefully a lot of stakeholders can become involved and be a very important voice in what the state decides to do in its plan to improve results for children with disabilities. Okay, next. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. It's a lot to absorb in a very short amount of time, and we'd like to know if you have any questions, just go ahead and ask, and we'll see if we can answer them. Everyone's learning at the same time about this, because it's very, very new. Okay. Yes, you can get the PowerPoint, and I'm back, kicked out again. Why is that happening?
Contacts, I guess. Yeah, I don't know why we have logs.
Lisa?
I think contacts.
Hi.
Somewhat helpful.
Hello.
Their phones and.
Yes, who's hello?
Can you hear me?
You're right. I think
yes.
that would probably be what they meant by logs.
Hi, someone else is speaking.
Thank you for noticing that.
Huh?
This is why I muted people.
Oh, yeah.
Lisa, there's
right.
something
Good.
wrong with the
Oh,
attendance
yeah,
pod. I can't make it
guess
small,
that's
so we
old school
can't
that we
see
have
it.
that in there. Got me to hold
Without.
on. Wait. Everything.
I think I'm going to have
Thank
to
you.
mute myself again because someone doesn't hear me telling them not to talk.
Sorry, we want to hear your voice, but not right now. I'm back out again.
Oh my, I don't know what's going on with the screen. Someone else is, I will keep my hands off of it. Whoever's controlling it, please make it better.
It's a disaster with this. Never happened like this before.
Well, I think we accidentally blew up the attendees pod.
I guess we did.
Did we? It's there. It is
No,
there.
it's not.
Oh.
Technological.
I'm on a webinar. I'm loving seeing them all mess up the whole time because I tried to run it.
Do note that
we can hear exactly.
We can hear everyone.
Mean.
We can hear everyone. Feel free to mute yourself if you don't want to ask a question. We had a really good question from Kathy Harstad that was in the chat space, and this is not the right chat.
What is this? Terrible. Okay, well.
Hold on, there's another chat.
Are we going to order
This is the right chat.
everything? And they know that, and they're.
So here's a question from Kathy Harstad about strategies that parent centers can use to interest states in parent engagement outcomes.
There's a, as you know, it's always a challenge to get legitimate involvement. Way too often it's a matter of giving it lip service.
That box is
the suggestions handout, which was in the file pod, and if you put your email address in there, we can email it to you if you didn't download it. Has a lot of suggestions for how parent centers can become involved, but Kathy's question is a little bit different. She's asking how can you encourage state departments, state agencies,
getting lots of little notes again.
legitimately involve parents. And it'll be interesting to hear from Jan Serak and Barb Buswell in a few minutes because they can speak to that point about how it's a very serious issue as to whether the state is going to vigorously pursue stakeholder involvement. But look at the suggestions because suggestions handout, it might help you in that regard. Barb Buswell also has collected quite a few very useful and interesting resources that her area is actually using to improve the communication between various stakeholders and the agency. How you build, a common voice,
So yeah,
and get involved. We'll be sharing those with you shortly.
Also, I'd like to add that, Kathy, with the I know we have looked for a number of years at that Indicator 8 parent involvement data, and really agree that in many states that data is not as robust as we would like for it to be. I think that some of the states are still using the NICSEAM survey and using it in the way that NICSEAM designed it to be used, and so they're able to gather a little bit better data than some of the iterations that states are now using. I think with RDA, it's going to be one of the big conversations for you to have in your state is what does parent engagement mean in terms of improving outcomes for infants, toddlers, children, and youth with disabilities. And we have, I think, more and more resources that we're posting in the hub that will help for parent centers to be able to make the case that authentic, substantive parent involvement is important for improving outcomes for children.
Certainly, one of the really powerful things is to offer, make yourself available to serve as sort of a conduit for the state to get parents involved and to keep the parents, aware of what's going on. And I know that's been happening in Wisconsin, where which Jan will talk about in a minute.
Whatever.
Is the PowerPoint available, Elaine?
Yes. I'm going to mute everyone again because I have to take over the screen to do that, and then I'll put the PowerPoint back up. So be patient 1 second here.
I'm fine with that, except for this whole storage thing. That's the problem. And there's too many that I probably don't want to be asking. Nightmare going on next door. So.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Yes, hot dog. Thanks, everybody. Okay, next slide is our two beauties in the field. We mentioned that they'd be speaking to us about their experience with RDA and the writing of the OSEP in their necks of the woods. So I turn it over to you two, Barb and Jan, to let us know what it's like out there in the real world. How's it going in Wisconsin and in Region 5? You need to unmute your personal phones, Jan and Barb.
Okay, I think Barb's going first. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How about we put your webcam on so they can see your beautiful face?
Okay, it was.
I don't want to keep looking at me. I know that. Let's go. There we go. Hi, Jan.
So Barb's going first unless she got lost.
Okay, I see her there. I'd say go ahead and go on, Jan, and tell the folks.
So I was just going to talk about where our state stands in the RDA process and, you know, kind of how we've been involved so far. Oh, there you are, Barb. Do you want to go first or you want me to keep going? I'll keep going. So in Wisconsin, our state began by bringing in technical assistance from the North Central Regional Resource Center to help our Department of Public Instruction staff and key stakeholders to understand OSEP's new vision for, you know, and timeline for this new accountability system for Part B. This included a presentation to the State Advisory Panel from North Central Regional Resource Center, and then this was followed by several data-related exercises with the panel, starting with SPP APR as a critical tool for this process. So there was a significant review of looking at the indicator data from the past several years, and specifically they were looking to work with the panel to identify trends and outliers, you know, to the trends, and looking at the indicators where there seemed to be the most either slippage or where we had repeatedly not met the target. Then our state collected stakeholder input on what our core values are, what does success for students with disabilities look like, what do we value that should be included in the RDA system, and what should our RDA system look like or not include. They asked the stakeholders, and largely, again, working with the State Advisory Panel initially, to identify points of leverage that the panel believed to exist. And also, I should say, before the North Central worked with the State Advisory Panel, they did the same exercises with the department's staff internally, like several months prior to that. So our phase one of this three-phase SISIP process that OSEP is requiring of states included gathering data and then reviewing our SPP APR data, the data analysis, looking for, to be able to identify a focus area that we would want to have our state concentrate on. And initially, council members recommended the department continue to analyze. I think we picked out 5 indicators to kind of look at in depth more, and then these 5 indicators were kind of, what do I want to say, shopped around to important key stakeholder groups. So like they met with us independently at the Parent Center, met with our State Council of Special Ed Directors, our State Teachers Union, just key state groups, and got their input. And ultimately, literacy was identified as Wisconsin's focus area. So currently, we are now working on getting input on what improvement strategies to use. So the department's been sending out like a survey that they put together. They initially are surveying local education agencies. We sent the survey out on our statewide listserv to get as much information as possible from teachers that are working with literacy, and just to kind of do a run through to find out what are people using in the state, and kind of just analyzing our infrastructure. And then the state's gradually working now on forming a theory of action that they can turn in. And I think our phase 1 is due. I thought it was February, but I think it might have been changed to April. I'm not quite sure on that. And then our State Department of Health, which is our Birth to 3 lead agency, used a similar process, using the Interagency Coordinating Council as the main vehicle for reviewing the SPP APR and other stakeholders. So our center was invited to send a representative to that work group. We've been highly involved, I would say, in the RDA process so far, particularly with regards to the data analysis. Courtney Seltzer, who's my co-director for Region 4, is our current parent-centered representative to the state advisory panel. So, was really in on the ground floor of working on that data analysis and selecting the area of literacy as our focus area. Our state agency has also reached out to us for doing stakeholder input. So we were able to review kind of initial data that had been collected so far and to provide some further input, and we agreed, yes, we think literacy is an important focus area for us to pick. We've also really tried hard to position ourselves as a primary vehicle for getting the word out to families as things move forward. I met with our OSEP team last week to let them know about the materials that the SIPR developed for our parent centers to use, and they were actually really interested and wanted me to send it to them so that they could get some further ideas as to how to involve our center and ultimately really be able to be transparent with families about the SISIP process. Finally, as the department is rolling out our state discretionary grants that start in July, they're including a requirement for all of our grants to address literacy in grant activities. So we have 2 of those state grants, small ones, not huge, and we'll be identifying or developing literacy-related resources and probably training materials for parents related to moving that forward. For Part C, while we're not on the ICC, we sent a staff person, Nelsinia Robleski, to the stakeholder process. So again, we were able to participate in those initial data analysis and focus area identification discussions. We've put out postings on our statewide Yahoo group about the new process, so parents are starting to become familiar with it. We've put articles about it, just a heads up, in our newsletters. We disseminated, well, I told you we disseminated their stakeholder survey already. We've had a phone workshop with our department to give updates, and in our 2015 training calendar, we have, we'll be scheduling 2 phone trainings, one really early in the year, which is when the first phase 1 information is due to OSEP, and then one towards the end of the year when we hope there's going to be more information available out there. So I would say that's all I have to say at this point. Barb, if you want to go ahead, please feel free.
Thank you, Jan. That's really interesting. Can't hear you, Barb. Press *6.
Now?
Yes, we do hear you now.
Good.
Amen.
Good. Great job, Jan and Lisa. I'm going to share a little bit about some discussions that I had with at our regional meeting. In each of the regions, the IRCs had meetings with their state teams. And at the Region 5 meeting, I had an opportunity to talk to the teams that were there about stakeholder involvement. And the discussions were really important, and I think they kind of play into what we're talking about today with parent centers being involved in the process. What I want to start with is saying that it is a very lively topic in states. And so I think the timing couldn't be better for us to either continue and enhance our involvement or work to be invited to the table. Before I start, though, I wanted to address Kathy's question about involving parents. If you were referring to whether or not parent involvement might be a target, I'm not sure exactly. I don't have any ideas off the top of my head about how to get states to address that directly. But I think in almost all the other target areas, being at the table as a stakeholder, it's very important to highlight parent involvement and participation, because all the research shows that when families are involved, students achieve better. So I think that's an important issue for us to keep on the table. Another dimension I want to say about that is the uniqueness. Well, let me see. I want to say this carefully. With this new SIP plan, states must, in their plan, justify and articulate the alignment between an improvement strategy and a target. And so what has happened, and I've read the indicator 8 responses, and many times the target would be X or Y, but the improvement strategies didn't have an obvious correlation with the outcome at hand. But in this new SIP, any improvement strategies that are chosen must relate directly to the goals that people want to get. So hopefully that will, involving parents and articulating that will be clearer in this new process. In terms of stakeholders, one of the things that was highlighted at the meeting is there are core principles in this RDA process, and stakeholders and family involvement are really integral, and as Lisa mentioned, are critical. The RDA system is to be transparent and understandable not only to states, but to the general public and especially to individuals and families. So as this work is happening, it's really important that stakeholders and the state and parent centers help to make sure that the process is transparent and is clear. And another core principle is that the system is to be responsive to the needs and expectations of the ultimate consumers. So there's a much stronger tie to what the impact of the activities and the work is than the compliance, as Lisa mentioned. Another dimension that's a little bit different is that this RDA system is encouraging states to direct their resources to areas with the greatest potential for positive influence. And I think this relates back to the infrastructure analysis. At that meeting, it was really interesting to me to hear OSEP and the technical assistance folks talk to states and say, you need to really look at your resources. How are you staffing people now? What topical areas are they in? How are you using your set-aside funds, your discretionary dollars? This is an opportunity for you to stand back and use those in ways that will yield the most benefit, rather than continuing with programs that have always been something that your state has done and people like, but really to look at the bang for the buck and those kinds of dimensions. My findings, if you were that states are very looking at this very intensively. And just like we got to experience this year with the SIPR emerging and new ways of doing technical assistance, when things are new, the processes look messy. And so states have a lot of challenges right now because they're being charged with looking at determining a target in a new way, and that should be involving stakeholders. They're looking at new ways of using their resources, including staff, as I mentioned. They're looking at new ways of prioritizing and documenting and thinking about their work, and then creating improvement strategies that will have real results and that are very tightly aligned with the data that they collected from the needs assessments and from their work, and then delivering those in such a way that they can measure things. And then this emphasis on stakeholders was very, very strong at the meeting. And part of the process says that they need internal stakeholders, which are the key players in the Department of Ed, And some states also are looking at, I think, LEAs as internal stakeholders or maybe consultants. But they also are to actively involve external stakeholders as well, so that they have voices at the table to really help them interpret and design strategies that will most likely benefit the results that they're targeting and they're looking for. And in talking with the directors, you know, one state director was great and said, oh, this is you know, a challenge, because here we are trying to do things in new ways, and now we're expected to have all these new voices at the table. And we aren't sure what we're doing yet, and so we feel even more vulnerable to have people at the table as we're trying to figure things out together. And I guess, though, that's the point, that if we're really going to have something that could substantively impact kids, we need all the right voices at the table. So some questions I asked the states from my Parent Center hat, or maybe my vantage point, is who should the stakeholders be on their particular topic, given their simmer? Who needs to be there? Almost all states are going to have their advisory panel there. Some states already had invited their PTI or CPRC to be there, but who else needs to be there? Once they decide who they want to be at the table, how are they going to invite and engage stakeholders who haven't typically been at meetings or been part of their processes? And then what kind of input do they want from their stakeholders? How viable, how intensively involved do they want the stakeholders to be? There was some discussion that in some states the state advisory panel is a group who comes together, of course, quarterly, but basically listens to the reports and the work of the state. And so if stakeholders are to be involved in a more substantive way, to analyze data, to give broader perspective, to help select the priority areas, you know, how can they change the culture to do that? What kinds of roles do they want the stakeholders to take? And then we also talked a little bit about what kind of orientation and training would be beneficial to stakeholders, whether they're advisory committee members who haven't operated and maybe in this intensively, or who don't know this process as well. And then what kind of information and materials would stakeholders find useful? So and then we talked a little bit about how parent centers can help, not only by serving as a key stakeholder at the table, but also by bringing many other connections. And so I think we as parent centers have a lot to bring. We have our professional competence and the knowledge in the content areas. We have huge connections with stakeholders across the strait, with other families who have close experience and expertise in almost any topical area. We are becoming quite adept at data analysis, which we have to do in running our parent centers, and so we can apply that. We're very good at training stakeholders and training lay people, so if we could contribute by offering supports, and Jan mentioned their call, I think, or their calls. And then I think another dimension that parent centers could bring is helping the state make their work transparent and clear and understandable to the lay public, so that when information about how the state is doing and the various processes, when that is disseminated, that people can understand that. So I don't know. So what does this mean for parent centers? I think it's really critical that we are at the table. Maybe we're going to have to find invitations. It's important that we're at the tables for both Part C and Part B, which is time intensive, but I think critical. I think another thing we can do, this is a good opportunity for us to interface with our advisory panel and share information, et cetera, because I'm sure they'll probably be involved in a substantive way. And then offering resources and publicizing the process and progress, I think, is important. Now, there was discussion in the spring at this meeting that some states were going to be visited this first year by OSEP. And I've learned that Colorado evidently is going to receive a visit. I'm not sure how many states will receive visits. I know that when OSEP called Colorado, they asked if the PTI would be at the table. So I think that's another important question to see if your state is having a visit, and if so, sharing your interest and availability to participate. So there are tools for involving stakeholders that I think might be useful for you to offer to your state to use in training or whatever else. It's a very lively time, and it's kind of a messy time, as I said, but I think it's a good time to get to the table and start forming these relationships and early and framing the discussion so that our states are most likely to be successful in getting the results.
Thank you, Barb. That's fascinating. A lot of work to be done. I don't envy you. Am I interrupting? More to say?
Yeah, so I just wanted, can you hear me, Lisa?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm not going to unmute all participants because that doesn't seem to be going well for me. So I'm going to ask people to, we have time for questions here, and I see we have some questions. I don't know if Kathy's gotten a good answer to her question, and then we have hands raised from Kim and from, somebody else, I lost her. Kim and Jean. And so please, if you have a question, and I hope you have some questions, please unmute yourself using *6 and ask a question. Anyone?
Kim?
Kathy, did you get a good answer to your question?
Oh, boy. Well, you can always feel free to write any of us with your concerns or things that occur to you in the dead of night to keep you awake. So if you don't want to say it now or haven't thought of it yet and you want to follow up, we have our contact information at the end of the PowerPoint here. Okay, back to the idea of the suggestions handout. The suggestions handout focuses on what parent centers can do to get involved, get your act together, get yourselves organized, find out what is going on in your state. We had toyed with the idea of also doing something brief that you might be able to hand the state personnel that would describe, let us say, how the state can be much more effective in involving the community. If you feel that that would be useful, let us know, because probably mirror something like what Jan was talking about, serving as a prime vehicle to communicate for the state with the parent community. So that you can download the suggestions handout now, or if you put your email address in the box, we will be sending it to you. Okay. And there's so much more coming. We've been working on building shared workspaces for the parent centers, and we're going to roll those out very, very soon. And one of the groups, shared workspace, is on RDA and the SIP and parent centers. And when we roll those out, you'll be able to download resources from there, You can share your stories. You can talk to one another, get strategies, keep up with the news, and also keep us up to date with what you've discovered is going on in your state and what's working and what isn't. I think we can all benefit from pooling our information and experience in this. All right, one more poll. And this relates directly to what you would find as a parent center most helpful from us, the SIPR. What can we do that you would find most useful right now? And you can see here the choices are that you would find it most helpful if the SIPR kept centers informed of new resources, or we might develop model announcements and sample website text you could use, create a brief fact sheet, nice typo, on RDA that you could share. Something else? Maybe nothing right now, but maybe later. You haven't a clue what would help? Or you just don't vote? Okay, well, interesting. That's a pretty overwhelming majority. Create a brief fact sheet that you can share with families and others and adapt for your state specifics.
Or create. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to end the poll now. I think we have a pretty solid response there.
Thank you very much for that information. That's very, very useful. Okay. And Deborah wanted to make sure that we reminded you that in addition to this riveting, technologically rattled webinar, we're going to have some upcoming webinars. We tried to make them all on a Thursday, so to make it easy. And there you can see what dates you might want to put on your calendar for upcoming webinars. The next one will be in July, and it will give you the rundown on what the parent centers had to say about in the needs assessment, which I'm sure you're all will be very interested in hearing. Some very fascinating results have come back from your participation. Okay. Everybody got that? It'll be in newsletters, and we'll send you reminders, of course.
Yes.
And
And also stay tuned and look for the announcement of the launch of the workspaces. We will have an additional webinar opportunity where you can learn more about the workspaces and how you can participate, join groups, share information with each other, and also we'll be really interested in finding out from you the types of groups and the types of topics for the forums that you would like for to make sure that we have available for parent centers. So thank you. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jan and Barb. And thank you, Elaine. And thank you to each of you for joining us today. And we will look forward to seeing you and hearing more from you. Bye now.
nice job, Barb.
Great job, Lisa.
Oh,
Great
Lord.
job, Barb. Great job, Elaine. I think Jan's gone.
Well, that was really a rocky techno experience.
Okay, well, let's share that on another phone call.
Yeah,
okay.
we have 33 people still on, so I'll talk to you guys later.
Okay. Bye.
I'm going to stop the recording.